Here are a couple of secrets if you're negotiating something. In a face-to-face situation, if you ask a question and you're only given what you consider to be a partial answer, respond with polite silence. Chances are the person you're talking to will become very uncomfortable with the silence and blurt out something useful. When it comes time to ask the next question, pause. Long, thoughtful pauses before you ask anything should prompt the other person to offer even more information. I've also heard of something called the Sullivan nod. I don't know where it gets its name, but it works like this. When you ask someone something, nod up and down as you're asking. There's a more than even chance that the other person will subconsciously start to agree with you. Here's another face-to-face trick. Maintain eye contact with the person you're talking to. Start by focusing on the right eye. In 10 seconds or so, move to that person's left eye. Repeat for as long as you have to. I've been told that this makes it look as if you're not only super attentive, but as if your eyes are sparkling. Never tried that technique before, but some people swear it works, especially in a job interview situation. Just a few social engineering secrets that you might be able to use someday. And you're welcome. Now let's get back to the business at hand. Secrets of Rock.
This is The Secret History of Rock with Alan Cross.
Hello again, I'm Alan Cross, and I have more strange and arcane stuff about the music we love. I guarantee that you'll want to use this information on your friends. I want to talk a little bit about modern collectibles. With so many people moving to MP3s or streaming music services, what sorts of physical music things should we be looking for? And I'm talking about investments, things that will increase in value. I want to talk about some serious craziness and weirdness, and when that's done, conspiracy theories. We'll also look back to 1996, but I want to begin with this physical thing for a second. The dominant music storage medium is still the compact disc. How much do you know about that 5-inch piece of plastic? And there's a good place to start. Why is a compact disc the size that it is? And before you answer, because one of the executives at Sony wanted his favorite Beethoven symphony to fit on one, let me stop you right there. Here's the truth. When engineers at Philips and Sony were working on a new optical storage medium back in the 1970s, they needed someplace to start, and they chose the cassette. See, Philips introduced the cassette back in 1964, and if you measure a cassette diagonally, you'll come up with exactly 115 millimeters. People working on the CD said, that's a nice size. Let's go with that. But wait a minute, said another couple of engineers. That's a weird number. Let's crank it up to 120 millimeters. Okay, whatever you want. And for the metrically challenged, 120 millimeters works out to about 4 3/4 inches. Now that a physical base size had been determined, it was up to the researchers and the scientists and the boffins to figure out how much information something that big could store. And that was determined by things like sampling rate, channel code, and the geometry of how the little pits on the surface of the disk, the things that store the zeros and ones, were laid out. But that still doesn't give us our answer. Back when all this was going down in the 1970s, there was just one factory on the planet with the technology capable of creating this new storage medium. And that factory was in Hanover, Germany, and it was owned by Philips. And the only type of disk it could press was 115 millimeters in diameter. Sony, the co-creators in all this, didn't have any manufacturing capacity at all, and they knew that if Philips were to insist on the 115 millimeter disc, that they'd end up with a huge lead in the marketplace. That ain't gonna happen, which is why Sony stuck to its guns and insisted on the 120 millimeter disc. And this seems to be where we come to the myth of Beethoven's symphony. It looks like the story was floated as a way for Sony to achieve a level playing field with Philips by buying them time to build their own CD manufacturing facility. And this is why the CD is the size that it is. Oh, and what's the capacity of a compact disc? Well, if you go back and do all the math, all the physics, and all the geometry, a pre-recorded disc can hold about 75 minutes worth of music, which, by the way, just happens to be the length of the Sony chairman's favorite Beethoven symphony. It's also about the length of the Red Hot Chili Peppers album Blood Sugar Sex Magik, which clocks in at 73 minutes, 55 seconds.